Joining me now is Paris Dennard, the RNC Senior Communications Advisor for Black Media. Paris, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So we're focusing on Joe Biden, and I kind of want to just ask you about tomorrow very briefly before we kind of get into his record and what he's like moving forward. Do you think that tomorrow is the day where Joe Biden kind of pulls away from this field, away from Bernie Sanders in particular, and kind of takes this nomination?
First of all, thanks for having me on here. I'm happy to be with the RNC in this capacity, but I will tell you that this is an unfortunate time for Bernie Sanders. I think the president is absolutely right in saying and showing and articulating how Bernie Sanders seems to be getting the backhand of the deal when it comes to the DNC. It's a rigged system against him, and it's an unfair process for him. And they keep changing the rules to make it easier for the people that they want to anoint or appoint to be their nominee. And it seems as if tomorrow is going to be if all the polls and all the momentum shows to stand up to be correct, it looks like it's going to be another very good night for the vice president, the former vice president, Joe Biden, and not Bernie Sanders or not the other candidate who's still in the race. He has the momentum, and it might be a very good night for Biden, and it will close the deal and solidifying him closer to getting the nomination. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because I think Bernie Sanders is a fighter, and I think Bernie Sanders is going to continue to try to make his case. And I think he could pick up some spots and delegates and make him more closer to being competitive for the numbers that they need to get to their convention. So there's no doubt in my mind that Bernie Sanders is going to continue to fight on the extreme left, the socialist wing, because there's a lot of support for his socialist policies within the Democrat base, because they're getting more pulled to the left.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And it kind of shows the power, too, of the Democratic machine, if you will. I mean, a couple phone calls from President Obama. Tom Perez makes a couple phone calls, too. And all of a sudden, you see people dropping out, throwing their support behind Biden, which to me is a little bit funny, because they've been criticizing Biden, kind of making the case of why they're the person who people should be voting for other than him over the past couple months. But you're right. Now we do see them kind of uniting behind Biden. Bernie Sanders, he still has an outside chance, not only to kind of pick up delegates, but also if there was going to be a brokered convention, he can still make the case that a lot of his supporters won't vote for Joe Biden come the general election. Do you think that that is something that may be replicated once again in 2020, kind of the same thing where Sanders supporters don't come out for Joe Biden or instead go for President Trump in the election?
I think after the 3 years of foolishness that we went through as a country as it relates to Russia, collusion, and people talking about an influence on our election system, I think the American people are now more in tune and more aware and want to have facts and want to have truth and want to have transparency and want to have honest elections. That is what this was all about for 2016, and that is what it's going to be about in 2020. But you cannot have honest elections when you see the DNC doing what they're doing to Bernie Sanders and moving the goalposts and making it more difficult for him and making it easier for Bloomberg to get in and making it more difficult for others to get in. I mean, it's shameful. So the American people, and I think even the Democrats, even the socialists and the extreme ones in their party are going to want this system to be fair. And Bernie Sanders is going to demand fairness, and I think he should demand fairness and call the Democrat establishment out for what they're doing, because it is wrong and it is not what America is all about. But I'm just so glad that the Republican Party is united behind President Trump, not only just with our fundraising, which is historic, and under Ronna McDaniel, it's outstanding, but also as it comes to the energy and momentum that you see on the ground, the boots on the ground. That's what's going to make the difference. We are coalescing 100% behind President Trump, while they are still trying to figure out the soul and the identity of a Democrat Party that's in disarray versus the Democrat establishment versus the Democrat socialism. It's a recipe for disaster for them, and I'm going to enjoy the show.
Yeah, and one thing that actually goes under the headlines a little bit is the fact of voter turnout on the Republican side. I mean, President Trump, without having a real credible challenger, has been bringing out people in large numbers, similar to what actually President Obama did during his first campaign. And those were remarkable numbers then, and now you're seeing it on the Republican side, too, for President Trump. So there's something to be said about Republican enthusiasm as well. But if it is Biden come November, he has his own baggage. I mean, we've seen it played out through the impeachment saga. It kind of died down when Senator Bernie Sanders was the front runner. But do we expect, for example, Burisma, Ukraine, all of these things that we've heard about so much over the past year to once again be a very major issue come the campaign?
I think that everything is on the table in terms of examining somebody's record for running for president of the United States of America. And so if they wanted to, spend taxpayer money and waste time and energy trying to force a connection between President Trump or the Trump campaign and Russia collusion, which was false and based off phony dossiers, then so be it. The media and the American public should demand the same type of standard for Joe Biden. They should want to know and get to the truth about Burisma. They should want to know whether or not it was a quid pro quo in terms of his son getting hired or the prosecutor getting fired to make sure that Hunter Biden was taken care of. They want to know what Joe Biden was doing when he was supporting things like the Clinton crime bill and ensuring that people that look just like me, young African-American men, were thrown in jail and their lives destroyed. But thanks be to people like Donald J. Trump and Jared Kushner and others advocating for criminal justice reform, getting many of those people home last year for the holidays, reuniting families. And so Joe Biden's record, Joe Biden's statements, Joe Biden's ability to lead this country and just look at what he's done in the past and what he hasn't done right now and what he won't be able to do in the future are all up for grabs. And I believe Ukraine, Burisma, his son, his dealings, all of that is going to be something that the campaign will bring to the forefront in every debate stage.
And, you can just look at his record, too, and that's going to be something that he's going to have a hard time defending. You could go to the Iraq war vote, his TPP support, NAFTA support, all these votes which have been proven to be unpopular nowadays that President Trump actually went very heavily against Hillary Clinton for in the debate. So to me, I'm kind of seeing a little bit of a repeat of what we saw in 2016. But I guess we still have to figure out the Democratic primary first. Until then, Paris Dennard, thank you very much for joining us tonight.